we got rebel spies, we got a Death Star. Holy shit, are you hyped for this movie or what, JD?
I am positively turgid right now.
Okay, now let's read the first two parts from the Phantom Menace scroll. Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. JD, are you psyched for this movie?
Boner killed.
Hello and welcome to Is This Bad? A show where we rewatch movies that we did not love and with some distance test our priors to decide once and for all, is this bad? I'm joined by my bearded Ebert, Jason Doyle.
Hello.
Hi JD, thanks for coming. And producing the show, she saw Rachel Doyle.
I'm the Jar Jar Binks of this show, right? Awesome.
I mean, I didn't mean it that way. I really did just want to say Shisa. You are not the Jar Jar of the show, though.
That's fine.
We're going to learn more about Jar Jar as we go on here. Today's movie, of course, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And to discuss this movie properly, we needed an expert. But before I introduce him and state his qualifications, and boy does he have qualifications. If you're watching the show, you could see his qualifications right now before I've said anything. I need to address something. So, JD, I thought that the premise of the show was supposed to be good movies that most people seem to love,
Yes.
that we did not love. But Phantom Menace was largely reviled when it came out in 1999. It has a 52% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
So people are probably listening to this now going, well, if you didn't like it, you were right. So why are you questioning yourself and rewatching it?
Right.
But I was recently alerted to something, JD, and this shook me to my core. I don't know if you were as surprised as I was to find out that there are people younger than us.
I have actually discovered that myself in my travels. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, because it's not just here in America, like you say. It's a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
There are people that are below our numbered age.
Yep. 100%.
And so I was a jaded 17-year-old when Phantom Menace came out in 1999. JD, you were, I'll just say age redacted, not because you were too old, but I don't want to do the math. How old were you? You could tell us.
I would have been 28 when it came out.
Ooh. Okay. So we are, well, you were certainly an adult. I was a teen.
Yes, I was a quote-unquote adult.
Were you DJing in Greece at this time?
No. I was bartending and waiting at the Hard Rock Cafe, playing in a band.
Okay.
You know, that kind
Too
of
cool for this little galaxy far, far away, it sounds
right.
like. But someone wasn't. And we have one of those children here today. But he's all grown up and he's married and he has 4 kids, so he's more of an adult than I am. Say hello to Star Wars fanatic and expert, Jeshua Kidd.
Woo!
Hello there.
Okay, Jeshua, see, what are you dressed as right now? Because I don't even know.
I just have on a Jedi robe just for the occasion, man.
He just had it lying around.
I did. It's from my Halloween costume. My son and I were Jedi for Halloween. So
Oh, that's nice.
that's I just saw it and I was like, I got to grab this on the way out the door.
Okay, well, yeah, perfect. Because, like, I'm sure a lot of people think they're experts about Star Wars. They've seen the movies, they've seen the TV shows, maybe they've read a comic here or there, they've studied the lore. But, like, that's everyone. We wanted someone that had more expertise than that. And, like, but how could you prove that, right? How could you prove that you were such a fan and expert in Star Wars? It would be cool, and this is probably impossible, but, like, maybe let's say you got married on May the 4th, as in May the 4th be with you, and you had a Star Wars themed wedding, and you dressed up as characters from the movie, and your groomsmen were stormtroopers. Like, it'd be cool if that happened. Did anything like that happen to you?
Most of that happened. I did have a Star Wars wedding. It wasn't on May the 4th, unfortunately.
Wasn't?
It was not. But it was March 21st. But anyways, we did have 2 of our kids dressed as, one as Darth Vader, one as a stormtrooper, and everything in the wedding was Star Warsy. Like the rings came down into Jedi starfighters, stuff like that. We had a first lightsaber fight instead of a first dance, all that kind of stuff.
Ooh, are you taking notes, Matt? Because these are some really good ideas.
Hold on. So was that to a song?
So all the music in the entire wedding was like string quartet, like versions of John Williams' great masterpieces.
Nice.
So the first dance was to, I don't even remember at this point actually, but it was one of the songs, and we had a a quick duel and leaned in for a kiss, and then
Who won?
we just tied up. We locked in, and we realized we're not enemies.
Oh, okay.
We're lovers.
That is so. You didn't play the dong 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 when your bride walked down the aisle, though, did you?
When I walked down the aisle, it was Vader's like,
Yes.
but the string quartet was very beautiful. When she walked in, it was I think just the main theme as a string quartet.
Oh,
Once
so
again,
for
very
the
beautiful.
opening credits, like
Yes.
the crawl. Mm-hmm. Oh wow.
Okay. Well, this is all beautiful. When did you first see The Phantom Menace? How old were you? And was it the first Star Wars movie that you saw?
No, it was not the first Star Wars movie I saw because we didn't have a Blockbuster down in Jefferson, Georgia, but we did have a movie gallery. And every weekend, my 3-year-old self would be like, can we please get the trilogy, basically. We had 4, 5, and 6 in the VHS all the time. And I had these little hangers that I would pretend to be lightsabers, fight with my dad and my granddad. But then in 99, I went to go see it. I think it's the first movie I saw in theaters. And I actually do remember, I was almost 4 years old. I turned 4 in that June. And it was great. I remember every single piece of it. We sat in like the second row back, and I was looking up at the screen like this. But hey, I loved it ever since I was 3.5 years old.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
That's amazing that you remember that. But
It is
I
crazy.
guess that's a cool ass memory. JD, where were you when you first saw it, and what did you think of it?
I was in Toronto, as I said. I was 28 years old. This is not hyperbole by any means. I have never looked forward to anything more than this movie coming out. Like, literally nothing. Nothing more than this.
Oh, boy.
Like, it was years in the making. Like, when the trailer came out, like, this was 98 when the trailer came out, I guess. So, like, waited 25 minutes for it to download. The 3-minute trailer. Probably watched it 100 times. Like, a 28-year-old man! Because I love the trilogy so much. And my initial introduction to Star Wars was very similar to yours. My dad, who is a big movie buff, he had gone to see it in the afternoon, one afternoon, by himself. Mm-hmm. Came home immediately, got my brother and me, and took us to the theater immediately to see it. Yeah. And it changed my life in terms of how I judged movies, right? Like, literally every single movie from that day on, right up until I was 28 years old, and something happened when I was 28, which was this movie coming out.
You found out about taxation through this film?
That's exactly. Pulp Fiction. Is it Star Wars? Like, is it Star Wars good? Star Wars was the absolute paramount... 20th Century Fox, but it was the paramount of any movie that you could ever see, right? Like, it was just and it wasn't just me, it was everybody of my generation. It was just like, well, is it Star Wars good or,
right,
or not? And the only thing that was Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
And, eventually it was just the trilogy would just became like the absolute, the GOATs of all movies.
Of course, right?
But for my generation. So when Phantom Menace came out, I remember working like a lunch shift at the Hard Rock Cafe, and every single staff member we had all changed our name tags to Star Wars characters. We were like running around like kids. We could not.
Wait, which were you? Which did you choose for yourself?
I was my nickname at the Hard Rock was Scooter, so I was Han Scooter. So they were all play on our regular names. So anyways, we were pumped, and we saw it, like, I think the night it came out or around then.
Right.
And, God damn. my childhood ended.
Come on, man.
When I was 28 years old. That's a pretty good run for a childhood, I have to say.
Can I ask you? I know me growing up, I watched the Ewok movies over and over again.
Ewok movies.
Did you hate Phantom Menace as much as you hated the Ewok movies, which I loved?
Oh, no, not even.
Oh,
no.
really?
No, the Ewok that was a made-for-TV movie.
I know, and I watched it a gajillion times.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm taking a back seat in this one because I think, as you heard, Ash and JD are way more passionate and care way more about Star Wars than me. I'll just say that my experience was kind of like yours, JD. I wasn't obviously old enough to see these movies in theaters when the first 4, 5, 6 came out. Maybe actually by the 6th one I was. Or the 3rd one. Mm-hmm. We'll get into it. But I do remember I was graduating high school, so I'm 17 years old. And the trailer comes out for the Phantom Menace, and I'm just like you, JD. I'm like fucking psyched. I'm like, wow, we're getting another one.
Yeah.
So many years had passed. We thought we'd never see anything else from this universe, and I didn't see it on opening weekend. And then I started hearing everyone I knew that went to see it and lined up for tickets was like, this movie fucking sucks. There's this guy named Jar Jar Binks in it, and like he's like animated or something, and I was like, what are the people? And I was like, okay, I saw this movie years later when it was like for free on, I don't know, HBO or some kind of pre-streaming service like on-demand cable television or something. I was either in Toronto living alone or Atlanta living alone. I might not have even finished it.
Yeah.
Okay, but I had by that point that I saw it years of everyone saying this movie sucks.
Right.
But part of the point of this is this movie has absolutely been reclaimed by a younger generation for whom this was their first Star Wars movie. Ash, I kind of was hoping you were going to say this was the first one you saw. Thanks for shitting all over my point and this grand thesis that I've built. But that's okay. So we are about to get into the nitty gritty on the Phantom Menace. But first, some quick housekeeping. If you want to support the show and get exclusive content, go to patreon.com/isthisgood. You'll get exclusive bonus pods, ad-free episodes, live stream events so you can hang out with us in person, and access to our thriving community on Discord, and the satisfaction of knowing you're supporting this show and allowing us to pay for streaming services where we can rewatch things like The Phantom Menace. And you could send topics for future shows to isthisgoodpod@gmail.com and subscribe on YouTube. Why don't we start here, fellas and lady? Star Wars, famous for its crawls, the yellow text that goes up your screen.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to read you the first 2 lines.
Why not all of it?
No. I'm going to read you the first 2 lines from A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie as we saw it. It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the evil Galactic Empire. During the battle, Rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, an armored space station with enough power to destroy an entire planet. Oh my God! JD, right? I mean, we got civil war, spaceships, hidden bases, an evil empire. We got Rebel spies. We got a Death Star. Holy shit. Are you hyped for this movie or what, JD?
I am positively turgid right now.
Okay, now let's read the first 2 parts from the Phantom Menace crawl. Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. JD, are you psyched for this movie?
Boner killed.
Oh, no. So we've gone from Death Stars and Rebels and evil empires to taxation, outlying star systems, disputes. Not war, just a mere dispute. And we got blockades, and we've got a trade federation. Ash, help me get excited about where this movie begins.
Okay, look. If you're just going to get excited about some yellow words on the screen in general, I don't know, you gotta wait and see what's going to happen, right? And then, I feel like we open up pretty well with the movie. Like, it's not terrible. It's pretty exciting. Some plot holes maybe, but we can talk about that when we get there. I don't know how you're going to do this. I don't know if we're going to go scene by scene or whatever. Just don't worry about the yellow words so much.
Okay,
don't worry about the yellow words so much.
Exactly. Well, I agree with you. On one hand, on the other hand, the argument that always comes back is like, this movie has this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. 100% of the time, people are like, well, it's a kids movie. I'm like, in what world is a kids movie start with a tax dispute and a trade federation?
Yeah, JD, I was the same thing. I was like, finally, the movie started, and I was like, I need to submit to the fact, which I probably did not submit to the first time I saw it, that this is a kid's movie. Case in point, one of the main characters is a literal child, a 9-year-old child. The hero of this, or one of the heroes of this movie is a child. The monarch, the queen, is a teenager. You've got Jar Jar Binks, a comedic side character. You've got all these other like crazy fellas running around. But then you do have centuries of domestic and foreign policy that have occurred before this that I watched a 20-minute YouTube video on to prepare for this that left me more confused, that you kind of need to know to understand what this even means about this taxation and the trade dispute and the trade federation and all this stuff.
Right.
That is what's funny to me about George Lucas, because he says this is a kids movie, and we'll get into Jar Jar Binks pretty much off the jump here, because I think that's the main thing, one of the main things we need to discuss from the movie. He's like, people don't like Jar Jar Binks because adults won't accept that this movie that I made it for kids. But like you said, JD, what is up with the taxation and the trade routes, and then a lot of senatorial politics?
I mean, to Esh's point, all of that shit actually does happen in the background, and there is some bureaucracy in Episode 4, which was my first Star Wars movie, and I was 4 or 5 when I first saw it. So it's the same. It's the same kind of the same thing, but they've sent Jedis to negotiate, and everybody's like, "Ooh, Jedis." And when we see Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan for the first time, I was like, God damn, there's some Jedis.
Exactly.
This is back when there's like actual Jedis running around and taking care of shit. Like, that part of it was like kind of cool. I was with them, even when they were there to negotiate.
Because I said, the way the movie starts off is pretty good, right? Like all this stuff he's talking about in Episode 4. I think that the problem is maybe just the dialogue, which I'm sure you're gonna get to too. But like you said, the 2 Jedi coming aboard, that's the opening, right?
Right.
You get action right off the rip. Like you see them come in, lightsabers ignite, we're fighting droids, we're running around, we're trying to. You might not have any idea what's going on. We watching it again, I was like, yeah, I mean, should I know exactly what's happening?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Episode 4 opens up in the middle of it. Like you literally see a Star Destroyer chasing a little ship. Like you're in the middle of the action, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's
which
awesome.
I guess to your point,
it kind of answers the question why he started with Episode 4.
Yeah,
because it's exciting.
Yeah, I get it.
Totally.
Well, we're not gonna go scene by scene, but like you said, Ash, we start off the Jedi. They're on the Trade Federation ship. They're supposed to be negotiating. It all goes to hell. They escape. They land on Naboo. They save Jar Jar Binks' life, and then they rescue Queen Amidala and they take her away to Coruscant. Now, let's go Jar Jar Binks here, JD. You saw the movie. You're 28. Is Jar Jar a thing that sticks out in your mind as like this is part of why it's bad, or had that not yet crystallized?
As soon as he is on screen. I mean, it was still like an out-of-body experience a little bit, like, because there's never been a movie that I've wanted to like more, like I went in there expecting to have my head blown off by, like just be completely enamored by this movie. And so at that point, what are we, like 10 minutes into it? And then Jar Jar Binks shows up. I'm like, this isn't the movie, right? Like, this is a joke. It has to be a joke. Like,
it's literally a joke.
Right.
It is literally a joke.
It was a tough pill for an almost 30-year-old to swallow.
I know. And I'll tell you though, what actually, it wasn't Jar Jar that brought me out of it. Initially, it was the battle droids. Because,
really?
Oh my God. I've seen more sturdy IKEA lamps.
You mean just the way that they're designed, you're saying?
Yeah, they're just like stick figures. Like, they're so fucking fragile. Like,
I didn't expect the battle droid slender in this one, at least, Like,
they're so bad. And then their voices, and they're like, the voices are fine, but they're just the way they talk, like they're droids. It's like, Roger, Roger.
They're like Dyson stick brooms.
Yeah,
They're
totally.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to kill. Just knock them down, man. You don't even need the Force. Just move them out of the way.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, you watched the movie. At the end, like, they were having some trouble with them, like people that are not Jedi. I mean, if you have a lightsaber.
Okay, all right. The Gungans had a problem with the battle droids. They sure did. Meeson not used to this technology.
Before we even go for it, I just want to say, before we get to Jar Jar, I do have something critical to say.
Wow.
Like I said,
I'm surprised.
You might be surprised. I was watching it again last night with the boys, and the pacing of the movie, like, and I understand like 16 years worth of waiting around for this movie to come out.
Yeah.
And then George has got an impossible task to make this movie. That's my defense of it right now. We can talk about this later. But the pacing of the movie, like we land on the ship, all this stuff happens, and they're like, oh, we got to stow aboard a thing, and then we're on the Naboo, and then we meet Jar Jar, and then we're going to Gunga City. Like, oh my God. It was, I was like, golly.
You're saying it's fast.
You're saying it's too fast?
I think the pacing of the opening of the movie, not the movie itself, but the opening, those first 10 or 15 minutes, like, I'm saying, like, we land on the ship.
Yeah.
Negotiations don't happen. Fight, run away, get on the ship, go to another planet, run from these people that are now invading the planet, meet Jar Jar. Jar Jar goes to his city, and then we're off through the planet core like that.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
I
but
don't know.
that's a Star Wars movie though.
You think the pacing is okay?
Look at the pace of 7. What was 7 called? Force Awakens.
Oh,
That thing moves. The whole thing moves incredibly fast.
I don't know. I just feel like there was so much like, can we enjoy the fact that Jedi are back on our screen? You know what I mean? Like,
you're 100% right in that sense, because these are like fan service moments that I don't even know if I don't think Lucas realized the fan service that he was doing. Like, I mean, not to compare it to Force Awakens, but I'm going to. Like, when we see the Millennium Falcon for the first time in that movie, it's fucking great. Like, you know, it's like that thing. It's a piece of garbage. It's off screen. We don't see it. And then Abrams knows how to make a moment for a fan. As I said, it was cool to see Jedis, but it's like. But it could have been done a little bit, like more like, hey, you want to see Jedis? Jedis, you know? Or even like when C-3PO shows up, right? And R2-D2 is he just happens to be there, right? It's like he's in the corner of a shot. It's like, oh shit, that's R2-D2. But they none of them get their own sort of moment. Yeah. Maybe that's cool in a way, but also like, I don't know.
If the movie was made today, like all big movies, when they are fan servicey, always take a beat, and this movie does not. And I don't know, maybe it's just the time. I don't know how that was back then, you know, like for movies, but like every big movie, whether it's Marvel or whatever, if you're expecting to see something or not expecting to see something, when they show it to you, you're like you use the Millennium Falcon, like it pans to it and it stays there for a second.
Oh, and you just
and then it gives you the little Han Solo music, and you're like,
totally,
hey, you know?
yeah, exactly. The only one that they really sort of milked was Jabba, when we see Jabba for the first time. And that's just because they announce him. But I don't know. I thought he could have done a better job with that. But again, I don't think he realized the gravity of all of the stuff that was being shown to us. That's all.
Well, it's interesting to me that like Star Wars lies dormant after Return of the Jedi. And apparently they wanted, obviously, the studio make as many of these as possible. And he was like, no, I don't want to do it for many years. And then he had developed a lot of backstory for Darth Vader and all these characters. And then finally, at least according to him, he says in 1993, when he started writing these movies, it was because CGI had got to a point where he could, you know, whatever he was envisioning in his head, he could see on the screen. And and my question, JD, is, did he? Because... No. You said the droids look like shit. I want to keep talking about Jar Jar. He looks bad. Yeah. He looks bad. And he looks, whether you think the droids look good or bad, even though they are machinery, they look more real than Jar Jar. Jar Jar looks like an uncanny plastic thing on the screen. And in that very first scene, when he jumps into that pond or ocean or whatever that is, and then they have the little splash to show you like, no, it's real, because trust me, something fell into this water because it's splashing. You're just like, ooh, you're making it worse somehow. So what was it that...
Do you not agree?
Okay, so the CGI, like, I think for the most part holds up better in this one than it will in 2 and 3. But part of like why Jar Jar looks so bad, like we just rewatched it, but we were rewatching it in like 4K on Disney Plus or whatever. Whereas when like I used to watch this on VHS all the time, and like
you can get away with a lot with VHS.
Well, yeah, right. Like when this movie comes out, like Jar Jar still looks better than a lot of even bad CGI today, I think. And the droids like look, you know, like they're actually there for the most part.
Yeah.
And like, you know, this movie was the last one that he did that was still mostly practical sets, practical things, and then a lot of CGI just like on top of it, right?
Wait.
And wasn't CGI just like, it was kind of like in the 90s was when it was really booming. Like it was just getting started. So,
Well, 94, Jurassic Park came out. That was
Right.
the first sort of, the big guns were using CGI.
Right.
And those dinosaurs, I mean, I haven't seen it in a while, but I haven't watched it in 4K. Maybe I should. But
Well, I watch it off one that was filmed by a camcorder in 1994 off the movie screen, and then it's been down converted off VHS, and then up converted to DVD. And I'll tell you, it looks fucking stunning.
as it was meant to be seen. Your point is taken, and it's 1999, and we've all seen some shitty special effects. There's things in the original trilogy that, they're like, okay, well, it would have handled that. Well, that's clearly a model, and that explosion, is, smaller than my fist. But the real crime here is Yoda, right?
Okay.
Okay. Why? Okay. You want your CGI Jar Jar Binks. You want your CGI droids. You want all of it. But just give us Yoda. We've seen Yoda. We know Yoda. Okay. You have Frank Oz. Like he's doing the voice, and look. He is he's a world-class Muppeteer. And we have to look at this cartoon version of Yoda, and I don't know. Somehow Yoda looks older as CGI. I mean,
I might have read that the puppet was in there for part of it.
He was a puppet first. So that's the thing is Phantom Menace.
And Phantom Menace?
The Phantom Menace has been special editioned more than people think that they have. And once again, me seeing it as a little baby boy, like seeing it again, there's a lot of changes now,
right?
Like over time that have just happened. Like one of them being they had a puppet for Yoda, but people still hated the puppet. They said it didn't look like the puppet from the OG. And so they were like, "Oh,
did they lose that one?"
Yeah, what
they did. They created a puppet from scratch because they wanted him to look slightly younger, right? This takes place like
slightly
40 years before,
like at 800 years old instead of 900 years old.
Exactly. So he was funky. If you go look up a picture, of that Yoda
Hold on,
puppet.
JD, because I'm not steeped in the lore. Is that true? Is he's like 900 years old?
Yeah.
So they were literally made him look at like 850 instead of 900.
Well, from what I know is the one thing, like you said, did they lose him? I think they actually really lost him. Like something happened. Either they lost him or it was damaged and it wasn't like in good shape. So they decided to make a new puppet for Phantom Menace. And, they used it in the film. Like the original cut of that movie, you see it like when he's walking around at the end, like in the chair. But go look at that Yoda and compare it to puppet Yoda. And they just can't get it right. Like even in The Last Jedi, they used the puppet again, and people were like, "I mean, that looks more like our Yoda, but it's still not that puppet." And people, you just can't, you can't please a Star Wars fan.
I know.
But do you think you would have liked it if all those, all the characters on the council, if they were not CGI, they were all
most of them are
on the
council.
CGI.
No, practical. Yeah. They didn't change much there. Like I said, there's a bunch of CGI changes. Like the pod race was not that long. They changed that. There's like the added footage into that. There's little shots.
Thank
just like,
God.
Right. You see what I mean?
Sorry. The pod race, that's probably the best part of the movie.
Yeah. Can we before we get to the pod race?
Okay.
For the love of God, can we finish talking about Jar Jar?
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. I was gonna say real quick about Jar Jar. Okay. Jar Jar. Once again, I don't think he looks terrible. Like he's not Scorpion King bad, obviously.
Right.
But he's important, right? Like he's supposed to be our first CGI character that's a main character or supporting character.
Yeah.
Like if Jar Jar doesn't walks down the road, then we don't get Thanos snapping half the universe 20 years later,
Yeah, I mean,
or Gollum.
Fair.
Gollum.
Is a very, very fair point. Listen, the CGI, honestly, about Jar Jar is the least of the problems.
Of course.
I mean, again, when I'm watching this, I'm 28 years old. This is for a child. Trey just showed this movie to his kids. Mm-hmm. They love Jar Jar Binks.
Here we go. So this is the point.
That's the
We're
point.
talking about, this is a character that was Huffington posted top 93 Star Wars characters. Jar Jar was last. It's hard to emphasize how much people hated this character when it came out. And I've not watched them, but I know there's fans have done edits where they've removed Jar Jar Binks from this movie. Now, as we said, the premise for this entire podcast, something changed. And that what changed is that the kids that watched this movie when it came out and since love Jar Jar Binks.
Okay.
And Ahmed Best, who is the guy that played Jar Jar Binks and does the voice, read a quote here. It says, "It was definitely the kids. I had to start looking at Jar Jar through their eyes, and that's what made me smile again." Now, those kids, they're between 20 and 30 years old. They have a different perspective on the Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace, for them, is their Star Wars. Episodes 4, 5, and 6, that's their parents' Star Wars. And 7, 8, and 9, that's their children's Star Wars. 100%. But the prequels, that's theirs, and they defend the prequels. So I see the same thing. I see the resurgence of the Phantom Menace. Esh, does that resonate with you?
100%. But I loved Jar Jar as a kid, and growing up, whenever I could talk about Star Wars with any of my friends that weren't ashamed to say that they like Star Wars in school, people like, you either loved them or you hated them. But I was always surprised when somebody was like, "Oh, Jar Jar's so annoying." I'm like, really? Like, really? Okay. So showing this to my wife,
rude!
how rude! But showing this to my wife when she was just my fiance before the Star Wars wedding or anything, I had to show her all these films. She had never seen them before, was not interested in seeing them. She watched that movie and she was like, "I fucking hate Jar Jar." Like, she was like, "This is awful." And I was like, like, it must be a real problem. So since then, like last night,
Jar Jar was a problem.
She doesn't hate anyone.
It's crazy. I was like, man, this is bad. But I put my critical hat on last night as I watched it with the boys, and I was like, man, I think if we had Jar Jar just be literally a supplemental character, like just in the background for a couple of scenes here and there, I think he would not have been that bad. But I think that he has more lines in that movie than Obi-Wan does. And that's a big problem. God. Yeah. Like, he is, I understand it. Like, like you said, with the edits, if they could cut Jar Jar out, he doesn't add anything to the movie at all. He's not important except for, like,
He was the final vote of non-confidence for the Chancellor.
But that's in 2 movies later. That's the problem, right? Like, there's this whole theory that goes around with Jar Jar that he was supposed to be this anti-Yoda figure, right? I don't know if you guys have heard this before.
No, this is
I read all about it.
Darth Jar Jar
was supposed to be a Sith Lord, correct?
Right. And Ahmed Best has said, like, there's some truth in that. So apparently he was supposed to be introduced in this film and been more so of like, oh yeah, I'm a klutz. Everybody hates me, but I'm actually pulling some strings behind it. Like you see that jump? That's a force jump. Like, he just has too many things for him to actually be clumsy. And he was supposed to be like, when we first meet Yoda, he was silly and goofy. But the difference is Yoda was silly and goofy for 5 seconds.
Right.
And then he's like, "I'm actually Master Yoda," whereas Jar Jar Binks is an idiot the entire film. Right? Like you see George Lucas says, "Oh yeah, I had to cut him back for 2 and 3," and he's in like 2 scenes. He was supposed to be in those new movies heavy.
Right.
And now you got all these things where Star Wars is trying to make up for it, like all these Lego Star Wars shorts that come out for the kids, and they're like launching them across space and like killing him or blowing him up. Every chance they have, like, they don't disrespect anybody in their entire universe, but Jar Jar gets shit on in every cartoon that you can find on Disney Plus. So
that brings a little warmth to my heart.
Yeah.
Well, in 2019, at the Star Wars Celebration event, it was like a 20th anniversary for Phantom Menace or something. George Lucas named Jar Jar his favorite Star Wars character.
Okay.
What?
What do you think of that, JD?
The man knows how to die on a hill. That's all I can say. He's just like, stand by your characters. I respect George.
Yeah.
And he clearly wanted to flex, right? Because if he's saying, I need to wait till technology gets better, and he thinks, wow, we're at the point where I can put a believable, fully CGI character on screen, make him a main character, and have him interact with everyone and be seamless, then, like, yeah, he fucking wanted to flex. And he thought that this would be a great character that would be beloved.
Right.
And so it's not surprising to me. Frank Oz, who plays Yoda, or the voice of Yoda at least, he also loves Jar Jar Binks. I don't know if he's dying on this hill too. Listen to this quote by Liam Neeson. I have to say that when we were making the movie with Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks, with Ewan McGregor as a young Obi-Wan Kenobi, Best was probably one of the funniest and most talented guys I've ever worked with. I remember calling my old agent and saying, "Listen, I think I just worked with the new Eddie Murphy." Oh. Like, people were way off on this thing.
Right. Yeah.
People really loved him. Everybody behind the scenes is like, "Oh yeah, I loved him." And the problem was like the the backlash was so bad. Like, obviously, Jake Lloyd, who played Anakin, like, he had a lot of issues, like, mentally because of this movie. He retired from acting right after this movie. And then Ahmed Best, same thing. Like, he's just now getting his flowers now. They try to welcome back into the fandom. He's played a Jedi in The Mandalorian. I think it was a Mandalorian.
Yeah, I think so.
He's played a Jedi on, like, a Star Wars game show that they tried on Disney Plus a few years ago. And, like, people love him, and he's, you know, back in the media a bit, but he wasn't even just the voice, right? Like, he was doing everything on set in a suit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
no, like an actual, not even like a motion capture suit. He had Jar Jar, like, he was dressed as Jar Jar. The only thing that was CGI at the time was, like, his head.
Right.
And then it was like, you know, he put a lot of time and effort into this. And
there's no doubt. Like, you know, it's the dialogue that was written for him.
100%.
And listen, but part of this whole CGI thing is that George Lucas doesn't like working with actors. I mean, he's sort of famous for that. Like, he doesn't really give them any direction. That's clear. And he writes the worst dialogue that you can write. Like, Harrison Ford once said to him, nobody talks like this. Like, how am I supposed to say these fucking words? Like, and that's Han Solo. I mean, I don't know, man. Anyway, Jar Jar Binks.
Anyway,
I tip my
folks,
hat to you.
Jar Jar Binks. And it's not funny at all. Like, this is sort of like an early harbinger of, like, the toxic fandom that's around Star Wars movies. Well, around really all blockbusters. This guy was going to kill himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he said he was on the Brooklyn Bridge and he was thinking about killing himself because people basically said, like JD, you ruined my childhood.
Oh my.
Okay, well, I was being...
No, he didn't say it to him. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's
pretty crazy.
It's pretty fucked up. Now, okay, let's at least bring this up because one of the main criticisms of Jar Jar is that it's a racist depiction. People think it's like kind of blackfacey, minstrelly. The voice is kind of like Afro-Caribbean kind of patois.
No, Mrs. Stay. Missy called Jar Jar Binks. Missy, your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
Oh, but it is.
And people think that it's racist. And of course, Best himself is like, there's a quote, he says, I think that has no validity. I think it's really stupid for anyone to put their own prejudices on a complete fantasy movie. I mean, obviously, that was certainly not the intention, but JD, did you feel any of that watching it the first time or since?
Well, I mean, there are sort of weird racist stereotypes throughout this movie, like the Trade Federation guys.
I knew it. They're here to force a settlement.
Distract them.
Obviously have a bit of an Asian accent. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that was intentional.
Well, how is it not intentional? That
I know it is intentional.
You're saying George Lucas is not giving direction. I don't know about his directorial style. But if someone comes on set, or actually maybe not even on set, and is just doing that voice, and he's literally doing like the sort of stereotypical Imperial Japanese World War II-ish villain voice, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, totally.
And I didn't remember that, and don't really hear people talking about that. I remember people talking about that with Jar Jar. But then when I rewatched the movie, I was like, he's literally doing the like that, kind of voice.
And then there's
I just kind of wimped out on doing.
Anakin's owner,
right, Watto.
Yes.
Yes, Nubian.
I think the people always say like this Jewish because he's got the nose and he's like, you know,
Shylocky.
Like,
I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
And so what? But why? Like, I agree with Best that it's like, I mean, I don't think it was certainly not created to be racist or to be like, oh, we want to code this character as black, and you should put, you know, whatever. You should read this movie in light of that. But I also think that like fantasy movies, sci-fi movies, they're all allegorical, aren't they? And they all, like Star Trek, like first interracial kiss on TV, I think, between a black woman and a white man. And the reason or a black alien, I guess, and a white man.
No, it was a
it was a black woman.
It was
Okay.
A member of the crew. Call HR.
Well, I also don't know a lot about Star Trek.
Neither do I.
But the way they get away with this shit is that, oh, it's in a future world, so, you know, don't worry about it, right? Like, X-Men is about minorities and how we treat minorities, is it not? I mean, this movie has the Empire. Is that not, like, Nazi-coded? There's literally stormtroopers. That is what not changing any words, what the Nazi paramilitary unit was called. They were called stormtroopers. I mean, it was whatever that is in German, but still, you get my point.
We get your drift.
Esh, did you feel any of that way, or?
I mean, I've never actually felt that way, but I get it, right? Like I could see it. But I mean, to your point, George Lucas is always talking about like he wants to pull stuff from the real world and put it in there, whether that is political or whatnot. Like he's always wanted to show that. And then as far as like the characters, I mean, when he is continually saying this is for kids, like all the cartoons from way back in the day have like caricatures of different cultures and stuff like that. So even if it's not intentional, like this guy's gonna be black and this guy's like Jewish and this guy's Asian, it's still like, I don't know, the adults might get it, but the kids aren't. They're just like, this guy's got a funny voice and it's funny, right? Like
totally.
I've grown up mimicking the Trade Federation guys my entire life, and I quote Jar Jar like all the time, like what I mean? Like I say it all the time, and up until recently, I'm like, oh, well, is this racist? Like, is this bad? Should I not be doing
it? You're doing a Gungan,
yeah, like. I tell you, I've never been offended if some white person came up to me and was like, "Oh, Misa," like, I don't know, but
yeah, but you're a Star Wars guy, like,
see what I mean? Like, I don't know. For kids, it's funny. Like my kids love it; it's funny.
Totally, yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question.
All right, back to the movie. This is a movie, I think. The ship, they leave and it gets damaged on the way to Coruscant. They get out of this blockade pretty easily, I'll say.
Thanks to R2, by the way.
Thanks to R2-D2. George Lucas said, did you ever wonder where R2-D2 came from? We're going to show you. We meet 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker. He's a slave to Watto, the junk dealer. And the Force is strong with Anakin. Very strong. A lot of midichlorians, if I'm saying that right.
MIDI, I think.
MIDI? Midichlorians?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think MIDI keyboard. Midichlorians.
Midichlorians.
And then Qui-Gon Jinn is attacked by Darth Maul, who is a Sith. We thought they were gone, but they're back. But before that, and aside from Jar Jar, I feel like it's what everyone talks about this movie. You guys already brought it up. Pod race! A very, very long pod race. The kind of pod race that when they go around once, you think it's over, but there's 2 more times. JD, what was your reaction to the big pod race when you saw it?
Well, the first time I was like, okay, here we go. This was awesome. This is George Lucas at his best. He's a hot rod guy. He loves cars. He's the guy that brought, jalopies and, dirty spaceships, to the movies, like these things shouldn't be so sleek and cool. Like they should actually look like they've been, batted around and stuff. It's Tatooine, so it's the Outer Rim. It's this fucking weird thing that they do. It's sort of hard to even tell what the pods are at first, right? Like it took me a long time to realize, oh, they're sleds basically behind these massive engines. It was just super imaginative. Skywalker sound comes out to play. They drop the score. There's no score for the first 2 laps of the race. That's about 25 minutes, right, Matt? It's awesome. I like the speed of it, and just, it's a little hard to tell what's going on, like I said, but I thought it was fun and exhilarating.
Well, I mean, Esh, maybe as the expert, you can answer this question. One thing I was confused about, is this a no-holds-barred race? Like, are you allowed to hit other people's things or shoot at them? Yeah. And also, too, there are, fighters or something on a cliff, and they're shooting at the pods.
Those are Tusken
and the announcer is like, "Oh, they're shooting at the pods." Are they doing that on someone's behalf, or are they just having fun? What's going on in this pod race?
All right, here we go. Pod racing. So you get a lot of pod racing lore because there's 2 video games that came out. You just get the race. It's awesome, but it's kind of canon. So pod racing just takes place all over the galaxy, right? Like, but mainly in the non-Republic planets, because no way the government will let you do this. It's too dangerous. But yeah, there's no rules as long as you win, because everybody's betting on these. All the Hutts, all the gangsters in the galaxy are betting on these races, trying to make sure that they get their money. So Bulba, who is, a thug, somebody that you don't want to mess with, as we found out in the film from terrible dialogue. Like, he's going to do whatever he can to win, especially because Watto doesn't want to lose. Like, Watto's pulling the strings in the background. He's like, hey, you make sure that Anakin does not win. But the Force is too strong with him.
Right.
Now, talking about this pod race being too long, I said this earlier. The pod race was originally shorter. And there's so many parts, and I'll try to think of them off the top of my head that they added back in. Like, these were not in the original cut of the movie.
Oh, okay.
Like when his pod goes spinning and he has to use the little thing to grab it, was not in the original film.
Okay.
A couple of the other people blowing up, like that one tracking guy that he's can't get by, was not in the original cut of the film. Stuff like that. Like, those were just not it. And unless I'm wrong, and they were just not on the VHS that I watched every day.
No, you're probably right.
It just was extended, and I don't know the point of that. I guess he was like, "Nah, people like this part. Got to put it back in."
Yeah.
But,
well, you think it was hurt by adding them back in, or?
I think it kind of takes you out of it a little bit, because if you're watching it and you're not here because you're a big Star Wars fan, like Matt seems like he is okay with Star Wars, not a big Star Wars fan or anything. He's like, I'll watch it if it's on maybe on TV or something. But like you're saying, it's too long. If you're trying to watch this thing, this is very important to the main character, who's not even the main character of this movie. Like, we need to have those stakes, right? And the most important part is him and Sebulba. Like, he's already got a beef with that guy.
Right.
I don't think we need to see like him almost crashing like 3 times. Like, why did they add that back in? It's just like, dang, man, if he could do this, he should have been racing. He should have found a way to have his mom be like, we should race for our freedom.
Right.
But she's just like, I don't want you to do this. Why? Like, he's spinning out of control and he can just stop and grab this thing without the Force or anything. He's just that smart, that gifted.
Yeah.
Which,
and he also starts the race like a minute after everyone.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, he's that good, and he just happens to be as good because the Jedi showed up? I don't think so. I think
he's always been.
He's like, I've been a pilot forever, which I want to talk about later in the end of the movie, but he's like, I've been a pilot since I was like 3. This is what I do.
Right.
So why is it? He's like, I never finished a race. My mom doesn't want me to race. Like, why? He's never finished a race. What happened? Did he crash? How is he alive? The rest of them died. Like, if you go look it up, a lot of those pod racers that crash, they actually are dead. Like, in the background of that one thing, you can see the little family members crying because they lost their dad. Like,
wow.
But Anakin,
the track is littered with bodies of dead pod racers.
They're dead, and you got Anakin. Like, you tell what? None of that makes sense to me. But the pod race is cool, so I don't care that much.
Okay, well, can we at least agree that pod racing is probably the worst spectator sport in the galaxy?
100%.
Why are they all seated at the start?
Well, they had the little
They're going
pads.
so far. They're not spread out. The spectator's not spread out anywhere.
Well, have you ever been to an F1 race? Like, that's
Yeah, but
basically
in F1 you can see more. Like, this is outside in a giant...
Well,
like, literally as soon as they start, you cannot see them anymore.
Right.
On a NASCAR track, you see the cars all the time. On an F1 track, you see the cars for a lot more of the time than that. I understand they're still moving quickly. I'm just saying, if you want it, like, I'm sure that people on Tatooine talk about, like, oh, turn 3 in the pod race is a real hairpin turn or something. Put people there too. Let them see.
Well, they had the little boards that they were watching on, right? Like,
yeah, but
they were watching on those
screens. It's just like a little dot moving around. It's not like TV.
No, I think it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it TV? They invented TV? Wow. Interspace travel and TV?
They
What
do
can't
have
they
TV.
do?
But also, they had those people on the ramp or whatever when they said, like, Anakin went up that ramp.
Yeah.
Like, people were there watching, too. I don't know, like, literally they can only see them like this. But I don't know. Like, they can only see them for a second, but they were there.
How long is a circuit? Like, in miles?
I'm not that good, JD.
Miles?
I don't know.
I don't know. Like,
Well, how fast are they moving?
I don't know. Very fast. Very fast.
In parsecs. All right, JD, another question I have, something that doesn't work for me in this movie. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the whole Queen pretending to be a handmaiden decoy part of this movie?
It's confusing. I mean, when is it? She doesn't reveal herself until
the very end of the movie.
Very
when
end
she
when
goes
she
in
goes.
front of
she kneels
the
down.
Gungan. Am I saying that?
Gungan.
Gungan.
Yeah. I mean, but Natalie Portman's face is on a bunch of the handmaids, right? Like,
I don't know.
No, she
On them.
Is
What do
there
you mean?
not shots where it's multiple Natalie Portmans?
No.
Was that just me?
I think that's just you.
They just
That's the
look
dream you
similar.
had last night.
Like
Every night.
the Queen, Natalie Portman plays the Queen. Then Keira Knightley was the double, and they just switch out all the time.
Yeah.
Like there's that story that their mom came and couldn't tell them apart because they look the same when they're both in makeup. So
Wow. Well, they should have had Keira Knightley deliver those lines as the Queen. God damn.
I come to you under the gravest of circumstances. The Naboo system has been invaded by the droid armies of the Trade.
Natalie.
Well, she does deliver a lot of them.
I am Queen Amidala of the Naboo. I come before you in peace.
Yeah.
Keira Knightley does?
Yeah.
Yeah, because for a lot of the movie, she's in the makeup, and Natalie Portman is next to her.
No, Natalie Portman is the Queen when the Queen speaks.
No.
except for a couple of
Not
scenes.
not in every scene. Not in every scene.
Well, excuse me. I guess I gotta trade in my card, my Star Wars fan card.
I know.
Since someone was fooled by the visual artistry of one George Lucas.
I think that most of it was Natalie Portman, except for I know when they're about to be captured at the end and they're in the building, they're like,
Yes.
that's the Queen. Like that's Keira Knightley.
Right, yeah,
But
yeah.
most of these big scenes, in the Senate and all that stuff, that's Natalie Portman.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
that's Natalie Portman. But when they're on the spaceship going to Tatooine,
Correct. Yes, that is Keira Knightley. So yeah, I
that's
guess you're
Keira
right.
Knightley, which I didn't know. Maybe I didn't know who Keira Knightley was when I first saw it, but. Probably the biggest thrill on a rewatch was oh my God, that's Keira Knightley. Wow. That got me through about 2 minutes of the film. All right, so now we're in Coruscant for the most exciting part of the movie. Say it with me. Queen Amidala's vote of no confidence against Chancellor Finis Valorum. Oh!
I move for a vote of no confidence.
The thrill. But I think this part's, probably most important we see the Jedi Council. JD didn't like the way any of those fuckers looked. And they ask for permission to train Anakin as a Jedi, but the Council refuses. They say that Anakin is vulnerable to the dark side due to his age. So I don't know, JD or Ash, which expert wants to take this. Why does his age matter? And why is it important how old he is?
Okay. I guess I'll take it.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, that they always say that. Luke was a teenager, and they're like,
He's too
old, So I don't know. I guess they have to get you at birth, basically.
Yeah. I will say this first. I'll preface it with this: the Jedi in the prequels are not supposed to be looked at as these all-saving heroes, right? That's the entire point of these movies. A little bit is to show both sides have a little bit of bad, and when you get too cocky, things happen.
Right.
So with the Jedi, I say that to say this: the Jedi are we have to take these kids at birth. Is that a good thing to do? No, they just go and steal kids from around the galaxy.
That's what the Empire does with stormtroopers.
Exactly. So why does that make them better? That's kind of the whole point, right? So he just goes and he's stealing kids, or they're stealing kids. And the reason why they want them younger is because the younger you get them, the more or the less emotional attachment they can have to anything or anybody.
Right.
And without that emotional attachment, it's easier to kind of brainwash them and say, hey, you're a Jedi, right? Because Anakin, this whole point, right, that fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, right? He misses his mom. He's like, I got free, but I'm 9 years old. I've spent 9 years with this woman who has raised me, and we were in slavery. And he makes a promise to her. He says, I'm going to come back to free you.
Right.
I'm going to become so powerful that I can come back and free you. Does he get to do that? No, right? So, that's his whole point. It's I love my mom. And the Jedi are like, ooh, this
Ew.
dude loves. You can't have that.
Well, you
can't have that.
You're 100%. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what? The Jedi Council was right in this case. As it turns out, they were vindicated.
Yes. As Charles Dickens has taught us, orphans famously well-adjusted. People snatched from their families and forced to be raised by parents who are not their own.
But hey, listen, not to go beyond the time run of this movie. They had 10 years. Why not go back and get her,
Because he never had a chance, right? The first chance he gets.
What do you mean? Obi-Wan, let's just kick over to Tatooine. My mom's still there.
But that's exactly right, though. The Jedi, that's why they're we see him as good. Like, these movies don't do a good job of portraying this message. Like, we have to wait until way later, where Star Wars fans can be pissed off at that later. But we have to wait until later to show, like, hey, Jedi aren't necessarily good. Like, that's the whole point.
Right.
And so, like, he's off training for 10 years in this time jump that's not a part of this movie. But the first chance he gets in episode 2, he goes back, and then she's dying, right? Like, he just never had a chance. And I'm sure he was like, hey, can I go get my mom? And they're like, yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't need to be attached to her. He's like, I don't love her or anything. I just
want to rescue her.
Like to rescue her if I could. So, I don't know. That's just my assumption of it, I guess.
All right. Well, that checks out.
So is Anakin the chosen one?
Yes.
I mean, so Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon Jinn thinks
Is
he's
he?
the chosen one.
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
Isn't Luke the chosen one?
No. George Lucas has come out himself and said Anakin is the chosen one because his whole thing was, I got to bring balance to the Force. Now, you got the whole 2 theories, but then there's the actual answer. The theory is, well, he killed all the Jedi except for like 2. So that's balanced. But the actual answer is, George Lucas says, well, he picks up Palpatine, he throws him down the shaft, and then he kills him, and that's the end. And so he came back, redemption arc.
Right.
And he's the hero still. Luke had to help him, had to guide him, but through Anakin having Luke and all that stuff, he is the chosen one. That's what George says. So,
All right.
So was Qui-Gon Jinn wrong to want to train Anakin?
not at all.
Okay.
I can, if you're ready for that, I can go into it. I'm ready for that too.
Well, what else are we doing?
Okay.
What are we doing
So
here?
the whole thing, this comes from Dave Filoni, who is like
Okay,
head of Lucasfilm kind of now, like all their stuff. But he worked with George Lucas back on the Clone Wars. So he says that, the famous song when Darth Maul and them were fighting is the Duel of the Fates.
Duel of the Fates.
He's like, well, what fates? The fate is Anakin, right? So if Qui-Gon lives, then he is a father figure to Anakin. And he can train him in a way that he's more in tune with, he always talks about the living force in that movie. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he's just balanced, and he knows that they're not always right. Obi-Wan alludes to he's always defying the council and doing what he wants to do.
Right.
But it's because he's like following the will of what's right now. The Jedi are too conceited. That's why they can't see the Sith in the first place, right? So if Qui-Gon lives, he trains him up, and he's more of a father figure. He understands the emotional stuff because he's an emotional guy too. He gets it. Whereas Obi-Wan, as soon as they pick up Anakin, he's like, why do I feel like we picked up another pathetic life form? Right? Like, he's like, why do we got another dumbass with us?
Right.
Qui-Gon's like, chill out, okay?
He's like, I'm the resident dumbass around here.
He even says, like, when Qui-Gon's like, I'll just do whatever, I'll train the boy, I'll leave the order and train the boy, I just believe in him that much. Yeah. Obi-Wan's like, what are you doing? You're an idiot. And he's only does it because his master's dying wish is, can you train the boy? And he's like, well, duh, I'll do it because you mean so much to me.
Yeah.
Promise me you will train the boy.
Yes, master.
So he grows up as like a brother figure, right? Like, you might fight with your brother. You don't treat your brothers the same. And he's always, in the second movie, kind of like belittling him. Like, hey, I'm your master. You got to stay in your place. You got to figure this out.
Right.
And then it's just like, he never understood that. Like, I think if everything else kind of plays out the same, Anakin can tell Qui-Gon, I got this woman pregnant. Whereas there's no way he's telling Obi-Wan that. And he didn't, right? Like, he didn't say, I have a secret relationship with Padme. Like, he's just, no, that can't happen.
Yeah. And Qui-Gon would have gone to get Shmi.
Of course. Oh, yeah.
Like, they would have, within a year.
He probably would have married her. They got something going on.
Oh, there was
they got a little something
loving
going
touch.
on. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about the immaculate conception of Anakin Skywalker.
God.
That was a plot point that was dropped.
Didn't remember that either until I rewatched.
Yeah.
Well, it was dropped.
It was dropped. There's a whole plan with that George Lucas literally has planned out through the entire prequels, and then like there's just seeds of it in the third movie. It just drops. Just drops it. The whole point was to imply that he was. Oh boy, here we go. The Darth Plagueis thing, right? The Darth Plagueis comes about in the third movie.
Yeah.
He can create life.
He trains. Baby. Come on, Ash. Let's cook.
He trains Palpatine. Palpatine then goes and creates life, and that life is supposed to be Anakin. And then he basically creates this like being that's super strong with the Force, and then he can train him so they can be, the whole rule of two. They got those two,
right?
And then they can take over the galaxy together. But you see it all in episode 3. You see how he's like playing that father figure role that I was talking about, and then they just drop it. George Lucas at the last second goes, you know what? Never mind. And he never confirms it. He just like leaves it up to the imagination.
Right.
And I don't even think that's officially canon now. Like they're just like,
wow,
it is what it is. He just came here by the Force. Yeah.
In my mind, it was just like some Jedi who like, I was never here. I'll see you next time, baby. Jedi mind trick.
I have left the plan B on All right, so let's get into the third act here. We're back on Naboo. Padme reveals herself as the queen before the Gungans. Oh, I love reading these sentences.
I am Queen Amidala. This is my decoy.
And if you don't remember, the Gungans are the tribe that Jar Jar's from, and she persuades them to join the fight against the Trade Federation. And then there's a big fight against the droid army in a beautiful field. In this part, Anakin joins the fight. He's in a little spaceship, and he joins. They say, don't, just sit there, stay out of the way, but he can't help himself. Whoa, that little rascal. And Darth Maul fights Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan in a big lightsaber duel. And then at the end, Gunray he's the Trade Federation guy. He's arrested, and Palpatine is elected Chancellor. Yoda promotes Obi-Wan to the rank of a Jedi and says that he can train Anakin as his apprentice. And then there's a big celebration that looks like the cutscene at the end of a video game. I guess Star Wars very famous for its lightsaber battles. Esh, what do you think of the lightsaber battle in this one? Because the only positive thing I remember hearing about this movie is people were like, bro, you don't understand. There's this guy, Darth Maul, and he has a double lightsaber.
There it is. You hear Rachel, the music, man, like the music does it for a lot of people. Now, my little hot take. It's kind of a hot take, but this is up there. This is probably top 2-3 out of the entire Star Wars saga in lightsaber duels.
Oh, really? Well, and maybe but what's number one?
Obi-Wan and Anakin episode 3 is number 1. I gotta say, and that's my hot take, right? I don't think a lot of people say that, but I think
I agree with you.
That's it. I'm gonna just talk about the movie though, episode 1. Too much damn cutting, right? And I know every Star Wars movie, you kind of have the main conflict and other conflicts, and you're kind of cutting, and then you get back to the main fight at the end. That happens in every single one of them. Mm-hmm. But this one, once again, I understand that the Gungans are important. Even you could show that just a little bit earlier and like have it be quick,
right?
Which, by the way, you ever seen Infinity War? I swear that's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same exact
same
fight.
Shield. The same,
the same exact fight. But anyways, then them breaking through everything. The Queen could be a little bit shorter. We don't need to see all of it. We don't need to see them like running down the hall and
all that is
going up the like. That was too much. And then my final one, the worst. Everybody hates Jake Lloyd, and this, like everybody gave him shit. Yeah. I think he does a fine job as a 9-year-old boy for the entire movie until he gets in that damn spaceship. His acting was fine. I feel like the emotion when he's talking to his mom earlier. I feel like when he's talking to, like, it was just cute. Like, I got a 10-year-old, so you know when he's like, "Are you an angel?" Like, believable.
Sure,
I'm here. Mm-hmm. Soon as he get in there, once again, I brought this up earlier. He's a pilot. We saw him in that pod race. He's been doing this since he was 3. He says.
Can't turn off the
He's like,
pilot.
Oops. How do I get what? Oh my gosh! And then, if you think about it, we've seen other Star Wars movies at this point, and we just saw R2 earlier. Just tell R2 earlier. R2 could just tell him, "Hey, press this button."
Yeah.
He speaks droid. He could just.
Well, it has a translator right there.
Exactly.
Anyways, so, yeah.
Jar Jar took over his body.
It was so. He's just like, he gets to space, and then he's like, "Let's go left." Oh, spinning, that's a neat trick. You're in a battle. Like, people are shooting at you, and you're like, oh, yeah, now this is, come on. Yeah. Like, that right there, all of that could be cut. So, you have the fight. Let's see the fight. Yeah. Now, here's another problem with the fight. In the beginning of the movie, the very first thing we see them do when they're fighting the droids on the Trade Federation ship, he's like, "Master, destroyers." They start shooting at him. He's like, "We got to go." They force run. They run at the speed of light.
Yeah.
Out, right? Mm-hmm. Where's that speed later?
Okay, Ash, I can't believe this, but I actually have an answer.
Okay, please tell me.
Please.
Okay, because I can't believe I watched a lot of YouTube videos.
Okay.
for the amount that I'm talking in this, way too many YouTube videos. People theorize that, there's these laser walls. Is that
correct?
They look like laser walls. Okay, there's these laser walls, right? And the reason that Obi-Wan cannot force run through them, or run fast to get to Qui-Gon before he gets killed, is that if he it will use all of his force energy, and then when he gets there, he will be useless, and then not only will Qui-Gon be killed, but he too will be killed. So he has to conserve his energy.
I've heard this before.
How do you feel about that explanation?
And most of the times that's not on this podcast, I use that exact explanation. But I have to be real. You guys. And so if you want to say that, that's fine. But Jedi, they use the Force for everything else. We've seen it. We saw Darth Vader. Luke jumps into that little pit and he uses the Force to try to freeze him in carbonite. You see him throwing stuff at him. Yeah. We see them use the Force so much in this movie. So if you don't want to Force run, as soon as that ratio comes across, why don't you use the Force to turn it right back off?
Right.
Instead, we're going to meditate. Like, to me, it makes sense for Qui-Gon to sit down and meditate a little bit because that's the way that he is. Like, that's his entire character. That's truly his character. Obi-Wan is a little hot-headed. And, dare I call him emotional as a Jedi, but he is a little emotional. Well, he's sprinting because he wants to help, right? And even after Qui-Gon gets killed, he's still waiting on that shield. You telling me that all that rage, he couldn't have just went, knocked down the shield and got him?
If he was moving that fast, you think that he was worried that his little rat tail might hit him in the eye?
That's why they give the Padawans those rat tails to slow them down a little.
But that's what I said. It's not about the speed. It's literally just the Force. Like, there's got to be a button that is pressed, to make the shield come on, or turn it on. These are just on auto the whole time. What's the point of those? Where are we at?
It's a plasma factory, right? A plasma energy station.
So as cool as this fight is, there's so many things that could have been prevented.
Yeah.
Or even, you're talking about using the Force.
I don't know.
That's
what people told me. That's what I read.
I believe you, but I was just there's a plasma energy factory in the palace?
It's like a reactor chamber or something. Something like that.
Yeah, hey, man.
You know how the White House is on top of a nuclear.
Right, yeah, of course.
It just doesn't make sense. But, you can't use Force pull, just whoosh, pull him into the ray shield until he can die, even. The Force is my ally, except for when it's not. What?
Right.
I don't know. That didn't make any sense to me on a rewatch. I'm like, all right, George. This is the coolest fight ever, marred by logic.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the lightsaber, I agree with you. I think it's a spectacular lightsaber battle. Previous to this, the best one was Empire Strikes Back that we had seen. But we've actually seen not a lot of lightsaber dueling up to this point for 3 movies, other than Darth Vader and Luke. So I don't know. I hear everything you're saying, but this is the one part of the movie that I loved. I mean, John Williams' score, just the wherever the fuck they are, this the plasma factory I found out today. It's just the cool Star Wars handrails. Get out of here. We don't have them in Star Wars universe, these bridges that are fucking way up in the middle of whatever. But it's just fun to watch these dudes jump around and have a laser sword battle. It's just cool. I don't care who you are.
We like the lightsaber battle. Mm-hmm. But can we all agree that Gungan v Droid battle sucks? Yeah. That was one of the worst parts of the movie.
That's what I'm saying.
Why can the droids... They put up these shields. The droids are shooting these giant laser cannons at them, and it's just bouncing off the shields. But then the droids approach, and they just walk through the shields. Did I miss something there?
It's just energy.
I think it's like a Dune style of energy shield, where fast things can't go through it, but slow things can.
It's basically cool. It's just a ray shield for blasts. Yeah. So it literally. We see these all the time in Star Wars, different things, video games, whatever. It'll block a blast, but you can walk right through it.
Yeah. I mean, the Russo brothers were like, we're going to have the same thing, but nothing can get through. Exactly. We have to open it for them.
Well, what did you think about this battle, JD?
Same shit. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, it was there for comedic effect, really, because it's just Jar Jar being a buffoon, you know, and just failing upwards. You know, the guy's a general now.
That's what General Jar Jar, Lisa, think of something.
Hands up. My give up. My give up.
They could have cut out some of it. Like, this is a very serious part of the movie, and I understand comedic relief still. But goodness, man, like, let him do something competent. He literally, like, Misa no having no boomba. Come on, like, there's one thing competently. Yeah. But I mean, when the droids like unfold, and that's cool.
I mean, yeah, and then they unfold into their IKEA lamp form, and it's just like these things are so pathetic. Like, I don't know,
no assembly required.
Yeah, well, some assembly. I guess the most frustrating thing is that the Gungans could be so cool, right? Like, there's the sort of Ewoks of this movie. It's like the indigenous planetoid people. I don't know. Maybe the Naboo are the Nubians. They're indigenous as well. But anyways,
no. See, the Gungans owned that whole territory.
Oh, okay.
And then they came in and basically colonized them.
Right. Okay.
And then they moved under the water.
Right. Right.
Again, this is from what I've read.
Right. So this is the.
So they should fucking hate the Naboos.
They're amphibious.
And they do, but they work together, and they're whatever. That part of it is fine. But it could have been so much cooler. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this is our first time underwater in Star Wars, and it's just like, and the technology that the Gungans have. I mean, they live underwater, and they have these cool shields but they still sort of ride around on these, whatever they're called, I don't know, the creatures that they run around on. But they have these massive explosive devices. It's not like the Ewoks where it was just like, we're literally using sticks and stones to bring down the Empire, right?
Right.
But
isn't that funny? We didn't talk about this in Jar Jar, but like, he had just come off being so heavily criticized for the Ewoks. People were like, these things suck, and they ruined Star Wars.
Yeah.
That was a prevailing opinion after Return of the Jedi.
For sure.
I disagree.
And with the song at the end and all this stuff. And yet he still was like, no, I'm actually not going to take that note. Right. I'm going to go harder and create a more childlike, Goofy character. Apparently, it was literally based on Goofy.
Yeah.
Again, something I read.
God.
It was.
Jar Jar Binks was based on... confirmed.
Yeah, confirmed. He said that he based it on Goofy. And the craziest thing, like, there was no way for Jar Jar to win. I don't know what he was smoking when he made this movie, because there's also the report, right, like, in casting, they wanted Tupac to be Samuel Jackson's character, Mace Windu.
Oh.
Whoa, that I did not know.
This is a thing that's, like, been, like, 90% confirmed, as I've read over the years. And he wanted... Michael Jackson was supposed to be Jar Jar Binks.
What?
But George said the reason that he ended up not going with Michael Jackson was because he didn't want Jar Jar to be too much of a distraction during the movie. Which, hey...
Well done, sir.
You can look this up. I have read this my entire life. And everywhere I looked, it is there as Bible. And nobody's like, this has been disproved or anything. Like, this is like... him and Michael Jackson, he really wanted to be in this movie. Michael Jackson also wanted to be Spider-Man in the 90s, but that's another thing, too.
Yeah.
Okay. Misa moonwalk back to Naboo. God. All right, well, now let's get to the most important question of this show. JD, you watched this movie when you were 28. You rewatched it this week. Is this bad?
Look, I'm a Star Wars fan. I have a real soft spot for anything Star Wars. The series, all the series, even the Ewok movie, Rachel.
Aww.
Every time there's a Star Wars video game that comes out, I buy it, I try it. The current one is a piece of dog shit as well.
Was it Outlaws?
Outlaws, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was very disappointed in that.
Yeah.
This movie has this movie has a lot of problems, and it is bad. The answer to the question is, this movie is bad. However, I love being in the Star Wars universe. I love visiting. I've seen this movie over 20 times. Like,
You've seen this movie 20 times?
Well, I watched it with my kids, and they got into it, but I probably saw it 10 times before I had to.
Actually, sorry, that brings up a good point. What did your kids think of it? And were you kind of like, when you showed them these movies, did you take pains to be like, 4, 5, 6, that's where the action is. And there's these other ones that we can watch to lead up to those. And is that the way they took it?
We watched them in the order they were released. So 4, 5, 6 first.
Oh, interesting.
And then 1, 2, 3. Is that Is that what we did, Rachel?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Ash was shaking his head. That's the wrong way to show it to your kids, isn't it?
I think it's the wrong way to show it to anybody, but not because of my like being nerdy or anything like that. It's literally because if you start with 4, 5, 6, you're like, damn, these movies are good. And then you go back and watch the prequels, you're gonna be like, what am I watching? So if you watch like 1 and then go up, then you just get better, you know, until whatever you think about the sequel trilogy. But yeah, I don't know how I could, like, if I had started with 4 with my family, then they would have never wanted to watch 1 or 2.
Right.
And like even now, like I'm like, hey, we're gonna do a rewatch or anything like that. Like I was watching this movie last night, and Courtney made it to right when Jar Jar met Qui-Gon, and she was like, yeah,
I'm out.
So me and the kids finished it, and she went to the room, and
yeah.
she was, I can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, look, maybe you're right, because if I went in blind as a child now, today, and I didn't know that Anakin Skywalker was going to turn into Darth Vader, like that's an actual tragedy at the end of this trilogy, right? That you know is coming the entire time you're watching it if you're my age, and you've seen all the other ones. So it's just like, okay, well, you know all of this is leading to a massive bummer at the end of it, you know. So maybe that's the way to do it. But anyways, the answer to the question is this movie bad? Yes, it's bad. It was, again, one of the biggest disappointments I've ever had in terms of movie experiences because of just how excited I was for it. And it didn't help that it came out in 1999, maybe one of the best years for movies ever, right? So, yeah. Sorry, Ash. It's bad.
I'll go. Ash, I assume you're going to say something different, so I'll just go next.
Okay.
Like we've figured out in this podcast, I don't have too much riding on the Star Wars franchise. This movie is bad. This movie is very, very bad. It's not just because of Jar Jar Binks. It is just from the plotting to the things this film is concerned with to the dialogue. It is not an enjoyable ride. It's paced really weird, I find. A lot of characters just don't work. But I have to take a bigger picture look, and sure, we hadn't seen Star Wars for a long time, and I watched this one, again, at least a few years after it had come out, and I thought it sucked and I wasn't impressed. But then I compare that to Force Awakens, and same thing, there had been a long layover between those two movies, and I was way more excited and happy to see Force Awakens than I was to see this movie. Yeah. So that does tell me that it's not just me, that this movie is actually bad. And one thing which I didn't really realize, I thought that the second movie and the third movie were equally panned like this one, at least critically. Not so. I think the second one goes into certified fresh, it's like 60 something, and then the third one is in the 80s.
Yeah.
Wow.
80 or maybe a little above. So I feel on solid ground to say this particular movie is bad. Ash, what do you think?
Well,
and can you say it's good so you could like sort of serve the point of this podcast?
I'm gonna say this. I think as it stands by itself, it is bad.
Wow.
But I did not expect
but I know. I said you're gonna be surprised. I watched it with my critical hat on last night. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, your critical hood.
So this is what I think about the movie. Okay. I think that if we could cut the Jar Jar stuff, I think it's salvageable, and I think it's a good movie. I also think that this is very imperative. Like I said, if I do a rewatch, Courtney's always like, we got to skip 1, but you can't. It has a lot of important things in it, even though a lot of people argue that this has nothing to do with the rest of the saga. Right? There's a lot of changes I would make to the story. There's a lot of changes I would make to a lot of the movie.
Right.
So in the regard of the actual saga itself, like this being the first chapter, I would say it's good. I think it's got a lot of exciting moments in it, even though there's a lot of it that's boring, even though there's a lot of it that's bogged down by a bunch of stuff that's happening, and you're like, I literally have no idea what you are speaking of right now. But a lot of things that people hate about it, like the explaining of the Force, I think is over dramatic.
That's a great point. That in general, like when you watch that original trilogy as a child, as I did, and then all of these things, the Force, the Clone Wars, like even Anakin Skywalker before he was Darth Vader. Like, all of this is just like all left to your imagination. And frankly, it would have been better left. Like, it would have been better if Lucas had just like continued the, episode 7 and onward.
Right.
Because like when the Clone Wars, it was just like, what the hell is that? Like, what does that even mean, the Clone Wars? You know what I mean? Like, and then you just sort of, then you see it and it's just like, ugh.
See, that's the
this
problem,
is not as
right?
sexy as I thought it was going to be.
George's whole
Michael Keaton in Multiplicity. That was my claim.
George's whole point was to show like he wanted to tell this whole epic in like a real world sense, right? Like he's like, this is what happens. This is how a lot of people are comparing Palpatine's rise to Trump's rise right now. I'm just saying. But like the same thing. They're just like they're feeling like. This is what he wanted to portray. So I just think, with episode 1, there's a lot of things I would have changed. I would have probably, if this whole thing is about Anakin Skywalker, like, let's start with Anakin Skywalker. When does he even show up in the film? Halfway through? Like an hour in? This entire thing is about Anakin, and we don't even see him until later. And then he's competent for half the film, and then at the end, he's not. And it's just, this dude is the guy that's killing millions of people in the future.
Right.
So that's why I said, like, there's things I would change. It's bad, but it's good because it's the first one. It's very important to the story. You got to learn these characters. You got to have these exciting parts. The first double blade lightsaber, we got Jar Jar Binks, gives us Thanos. So it's good. I'm going to say it's good. It's secretly bad, but it's good.
There you have it. JD, what's the next movie we're watching? Do we know?
Oh, it's Christmas time, so we're going to do a Christmas movie that... Now, to be fair, I have not actually seen all the way through because I've tried to watch it maybe 3 times and I bailed on it. It's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. An absolute classic.
Yeah.
But, just a stinker to me. Like... Cringe. I'm not looking forward to watching this. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I haven't tried to watch it in at least 10 years, so...
I don't know if I've ever gotten all the way through it either.
So... I'm not was it the Griswolds, right?
Yeah. I was just going to say, Rachel, you haven't gotten through any of the movies.
Oh, that's true.
You are constantly saying, well, I did watch this and I liked it, but I did not watch. I left the room... many times. This is an absolute Christmas classic. Ash, have you seen this movie?
I have not seen it, no.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, trust me, it's a classic.
People love it. People love it. I think when we did a draft show, I think maybe Trey Kirby. Oh, maybe it was Skeets. It was the other Skeets or Trey picked it as their movie to watch.
It might have been Trey. I feel like we just talked about this in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a little bit ago. So
yeah, so Trey likes it. So
okay, perfect. Well, we'll figure out what we think. Remember, check us out, patreon.com/isthisgood. Email us, isthisgoodpod@gmail.com. Tell us what you thought of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And more importantly, have your opinions changed on it? And also, more importantly, how old were you when you saw it? Because that seems to be the deciding factor into whether you think it was good or not. Thanks for listening. Thanks in advance for leaving a 5-star review for Rachel, JD, and especially Ash. I'm Matt Austin. Thanking you for joining Is This Bad Movie Club. We'll see you soon. Oh, maybe Ash, maybe you can end it with like a cool Star Wars line.
May the Force be with you.
That is so wizard.
And with you.
And you. Bye.